I'm Mina Malik Hussain, and you're watching The Coffee Table. Today we've got a really interesting show, and I know I say this to you every time, but it's true every time as well. So we're talking about civics today. Did you know what civics are? Did you know that as responsible citizens of a democratic country, having a civic education and being aware of your responsibilities as a citizen, all of that is civics. So joining us today on set to talk about the amazing work that they are doing in trying to foster a sense of civics in all of us in a super fun and accessible way, we've got Daniyal Noorani, whose studio Vakra makes Quaid se Baatein. Fantastic cartoon for kids and grown-ups, for info. And we've got Arafat Mazhar, who is the founder of Shehri, Pakistan. Hi, guys. Welcome to the set.
Hey, Mina.
It's really great to have you guys.
Great to be here.
Yes, good. Exciting conversations to be had today.
Yes.
So, Arafat, tell me, for people who haven't seen Shehri Pakistan's work, what does it do?
So Shehri Pakistan, in simplest terms, makes civic education accessible.
Right.
And the way it does that is it makes content on digital content on constitutional literacy and for legal awareness in public, in social media, through animations, through posters, through video games, and in Urdu. And our purpose is to make sure that we can indigenize, localize the idea of what it means to be a Shehri, what it means to be a citizen.
Yes, which is crucial. So what is civics? Because I think a lot of people aren't very familiar with the term as well. And it just sounds like something that you might do in law school. Civics.
Yeah, it's either that or sometimes people have a very kumbaya idea of civics, grow trees. That's civics.
Yeah.
No, civics is a pretty important, crucial subject, and it unravels the idea of democracy, governance, of bureaucracy, how you navigate these systems. Because at the end of the day, for a working democracy, you don't just vote and wait 5 years.
Yes.
You are an active participant, informed, responsible person who understands the social contracts you have with the government and with each other.
And that's really important, the social contract, which is basically the responsibility that the state and the citizen have to sort of work in tandem to make democracy effective. Because the whole point of democracy, from what I understand, is that it's rule of the people by the people.
Yeah.
But that can't be effective if people aren't able to challenge their government. Or even, I know that for us, it's a sort of tricky thing to be critical culturally. Like being critical is seen as something very problematic, but it can be done in a way that's productive and is actually trying to improve things for everybody. So, Daniyal, I know that Quaid se Baatein, which is this great cartoon, which is pitched to children primarily, but it tackles a lot of really grown-up subjects as well.
Yeah. So with Quaid se Baatein, you mentioned that being critical is seen as being negative.
Yeah.
But critique is the first step towards improvement, towards starting a dialogue.
Yeah.
So we as a society need to be much more accepting of having criticism and having critical dialogue. So with Quaid se Baatein, one of the objectives is to instill this sense of critical thinking ability. Because if you don't have that critical thinking ability, and what critical thinking is basically is the ability to deconstruct statements into problems and identify challenges. And if children...
Again, crucial, and these are things that a lot of students don't learn in school either.
Absolutely. So our curriculum is not suited or tailored towards critical thinking. It's very test oriented, it's very cramming oriented. Class 5 in class 5 there's the board exam, so you have to cram in what's necessary and then the next one. So you're not understanding, why you're doing something. Even when I studied and I went to, a private school, I had the best teachers, so to speak, but I was doing math and I didn't know what a differential was. Like I didn't know it was the limit of a function of a limit and what the rationale behind was. That I got to know that when I went to college abroad. They gave me the insight, they gave me the knowledge. So having the ability...
Some of us still don't know what that is.
But you lost me a little bit.
I was like, differential, what?
I've totally forgotten it as well. I think I just made half of that up.
But the point is that we were taught in school in ways that we were just sort of receiving information, but we weren't told about the why and the wherefore of anything.
Absolutely. So being able to sift through information now is a skill set that every child needs to have, because having knowledge is not a skill anymore. It's something that's readily available online. You know, you can have knowledge, but what you do with that knowledge, that is now a skill. So with Quaid se Baatein, what we're doing is, we're sort of trying to instill good civics. And when we say civics, there are norms such as standing in line, queuing, etc. But there are also values. So the problem statement that we identified is that when we looked at Pakistan as a society, we saw that there's a lot of emphasis on technical education, you know, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3 is alphabet pe. There's not a lot of emphasis on making better citizens, better Shehris. And if you look at our problems as a nation, a lot of them stem from lack of values, corruption. It's not that corruption is being done by somebody illiterate. It's being done by somebody very knowledgeable. It's their values don't see it as something being corrupt. Extremism. We can simplify it and think that these people are, you know, not technically knowledgeable, but the leaders of these movements are usually highly knowledgeable. It's the value. So that was our analysis, and that's why we said that we needed to provide a counter narrative. And actually, I don't like the word counter narrative. I'll take that back. We had to provide our own narrative. That was positive.
A parallel narrative that kind of balances things out.
Exactly. So that's where Quaid se Baatein stem from. It's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but trying to just put good values within children, you know, make good human beings.
I think that's a really important point, that education doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a certain set of values that make you a better citizen and, you know, sort of then by association a better person and a better citizen and somebody who can interact with your fellow people in a tolerant and progressive way. So Arafat, you mentioned to me that Shehri Pakistan sort of came out from academic research that you and your associates had done, and you realized that there was a big gap in, I don't want to say market, but let's say in the discourse, that there was an absence of any kind of civic dialogue happening, which is very telling, because from what Daniyal is telling us, again, you can go to school, you can study, you can be in school for a long time, but still not have a sense of civic values.
So we started off as a research institution, and we had every discipline there. We had muftis there, we had anthropologists there, we had political scientists there, and we were studying some conflict issues in Pakistan. And
because again, they're so complicated and they're so complex that you need to have different
multiple disciplines
approaches to it.
And one of the recommendations that came by very crucially was, look, we don't have the vocabulary. We have very competing notions, very contesting notions of what it means to be a citizen. And unless we have the same vocabulary, how can we have a dialogue?
That's really interesting. So what do you mean when you say vocabulary?
So what I mean is, for example, rule of law. What does it mean for me? What does it mean for a friend of mine in Multan who might belong to a different demographic? Are we talking about the same thing? Does he know that it is for his well-being and it's not a Eurocentric Western idea, but is good for us? How do we localize it? How do we make it Pakistani? You see, the term citizen does not just mean you live here. It's a construct with a lot of values, with 2,000 years of civic action that involves egalitarian values, non-discrimination, all of those things. And I think that's what we want to do with Shehri. To make Shehri more than a bashanda. Bashanda means someone who lives here. We want to bring values in that term. We want to reconstruct what Shehri means through this interactive medium. And partly our research also showed this discontent. So this discontent.
What kind of discontent?
So this discontent with the state. This distrust with the state.
So a sense that the state isn't doing right by us.
Yes, and that it's not for us. So how do we transform that energy of discontent into something constructive, democratic participation?
But participation, I think, is like the crucial word here. Because a democracy is supposed to be, the people should feel like they're a part of that process.
Yes,
and
now
not
tech
just like you said, voting and then just being like, well, 5 years.
Yes, that's not what democracy is. And I think now tech helps us a lot. For example, we have a product called Mukalama, like a virtual parliament. And we've had like hundreds of debates that happen in parliament where people argue for and against a position.
Really? So online people are having these debates?
Debates on foreign policy, on budget. Just a few days ago, we had one on consent. On consent
crucial.
in Urdu. So, and in marriage, in relationships in marriage, and we're talking about marital rape, things that are not very easy to talk about. And Razamandi, the term. And I never thought it would happen. And we had a very constructive conversation. tech allows you, design and technology allows you to reduce the gap between the state and the citizen. You can bring what you want, you can say what you want much easier, and you can connect them and hold them accountable as you should as a citizen in a democracy.
Yeah. And Daniyal, do you feel like tech has indeed helped? Because a lot of people watch, for example, Quaid Se Baatein on YouTube, and again, it's animated, which is all very technical. You know, so, and I feel like the animation process has probably been easier because of that, of technology. You're not sitting in hand drawing everything.
Definitely. Yeah, animation has become easier, but still is very labor intensive. Technology has helped both in creation and dissemination.
Dissemination, crucially.
Absolutely. So, with Quaid Se Baatein, our YouTube channel, we fortunately get around about 3 million views, which are organically on YouTube, which is something that's great. So, it's taking roots. You're seeing that your work is, you know, resonating with people, which is really what motivates a person. Now, I have lost my chain of thought. So
but it's also a more direct. It's also a more direct way of speaking to your demographic. You put out a video, and there's no interference in between. You don't have to get permission from anybody. You don't have to. No, there's no censor. You know, you can just put out your content on your YouTube channel or on Instagram or social media. And
so while that's true, we've gone through channels. So Quaid Se Baatein, initially when the episodes are launched, it airs on a large TV channel so that we get wider reach. While digital is helping, right now TV is still the main form of media that people are consuming. So the advantage of technology is that initially there were only a few touch points where you could impact behavior. It was either in the home, you get your values over there, you get it in school or through your religious learning. So these were the three
main places.
Now with technology, you can use media as a way to insert new thoughts into a child's mind and give them the opportunity to reconcile those thoughts on their own. So that's been something beneficial with technology, and the fact that the YouTube channel is something that will continue forever.
Yes.
It's fantastic that, you know, people will see the work, they will learn the messages that we've given of positive, you know, civic values, how to be, you know, hardworking, tolerant, respectful of other people.
There's so many layers there, and I really like the kind of rebel aspect that you can go straight to the kids. Young rebels, if you are watching, you know where you can go for direct information. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll see you in a minute. Don't go anywhere. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking about civics and tech and how you can be like a rebel civic person through the internet. But jokes aside, you can actually do that. So Arafat, tell me, a lot of the stuff that I've seen, Shehri, Pakistan's videos and things, I've seen on Instagram, for example. And I feel like a lot of these conversations are also preaching to the converted on one level. Because a lot of us sort of, for example, us three on this sofa, we all agree about the things that we're talking about. But it's also really crucial to be able to reach a wider pool, especially for civics, because civics concerns every single citizen, regardless of background and where you come from and where you're positioned. So that's where the tech then also becomes doubly important, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the driving forces for us as an organization is that we are not going to have a conversation in a bubble. We're not going to preach. We're not going to preach to anyone. We're going to have a conversation. We want to hear what you have to say, and let's figure things out. And number two, we don't want to talk in an echo chamber. And the way technology helps us in that is that you can target, you can tell, you got 40 million people on Facebook, and you're telling Facebook what I want to do. And we're partnered with Facebook. We're their official partners for digital citizenship and civic education. So and they help us out. What we do is we want to reach 52 districts. We want to reach a demographic that is religious leaning, that may have an ideological background. People who like Mufti Taqi Usmani, let's talk to them. And then don't preach at them. Ask them questions. Let them see the content, interact. For example, we're making video games. In which, in mobile phones.
Oh, so fine. I want to play one of those.
Yeah, so they're role-playing games in which you have moral dilemmas. And you have to choose. And in those moral dilemmas, there's ability to improve your cognitive functions and critical thinking, but also some very crucial civic ideas. And by the end, there's this notion of greater tolerance for ambiguity. that there can be more than one way of looking at things.
Greater tolerance for ambiguity.
Yeah.
Ambiguity.
Yeah, and that's very crucial. If in order not to have knee-jerk reactions and have a civic discourse.
Because then the civic discourse has to be flexible enough
Yes.
to include everybody.
Yes.
It can't just be that it's my word, the highway.
Absolutely, and which is why we have to not be hypocrites as well.
Yes.
So what we have to do is make sure if the people disagree with us, then let us figure out in an indigenous manner what would being a Shehri look like for us, because it's going to look different.
And it doesn't mean that you have to give up your sort of, the instruction that you get at home, your religious instruction, the sort of the values that you've grown up with can remain intact.
Absolutely.
But you can also still be a good citizen. And, I see that a lot in Quaid se Baatein as well, where, like Zainab has a choice. And then you have the actual Quaid come in. So how did that happen? Well, on one level, it's very obvious that, of course, Quaid has.
Yeah, I mean, it was as simple as the fact and disappointing as the fact that in around 70 plus years of existence, we've only been able to produce one unifying role model. All our role models somehow become polarizing. You can take anyone and they become polarizing. I guess the only other person is Idi Saab, who's unifiedly respected. Wo bhi,
and was,
So that was a idea behind it, to take somebody who was credible, who's, when we're making episodes of Quaid se Baatein, we do research and we make sure that it's based on his quotes or his life.
Okay, so it's legit, things that he's actually on record having said.
Exactly.
So you're not putting words in the Quaid.
Exactly, we wanted to be very mindful of that, because that could be very, manipulative.
Yeah.
So we were mindful of that, and we wanted to take a figure that was universally respected so that it's unifying. We didn't want to be polarizing, and we didn't want necessarily to, because as Arafat mentioned, technology media is resulting in us creating echo chambers, and it's very polarizing. If I have a point of view, I can find something on the internet to support my point of view. And we're seeing technology is resulting in people becoming more polarized. So we wanted our content to be unifying. It should resonate with somebody who is either liberal, who is conservative. These should be the universal values of a Pakistani citizen. We as a country actually lack a strong national identity.
Yes, that's so true. And it's quite the sort of root of many discontent, as Arafat.
And civics is that methodology of crafting that identity, crafting that social contract that we have with each other, and we don't have a strong national identity, unfortunately. And with Quaid se Baatein, the goal was that these are values that we believe, and through research that we think Quaid would have wanted to be espoused within Pakistan today. So that's it. That's the the goal of Quaid se Baatein.
And I often feel like, especially with civics, a lot of times people think that it's just being too sensitive, and it's just being like, what's the big deal? Like, one is just sort of trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. But I feel like, especially with Quaid se Baatein, a lot of it is about the small things. Like you said, standing in a line, don't steal electricity, don't lie. And these are not just moral values, but they're also civic values. And I find that that's really important to sort of, it goes on all levels.
Absolutely.
Really.
And Quaid se Baatein has done a fantastic job with that. I think it's been very inspiring the way they've done things that are extremely crucial and central, and I think resonates with the public as well. It's just that kids, unfortunately, don't have content like that. They should get to have entertaining content that have good moral values in them, not just a teacher telling them this is how you should be.
Good moral values, and one always thinks that a moralistic book or a moralistic or a TV show with a moral will be preachy, but it really isn't. And I think that's a really great balance that the show achieves, and I think what the viewership is.
Yes, absolutely. That's the reason people are watching it. People won't watch it, Quaid ke Baatein, if it wasn't had that balance.
It was fun, and it is fun.
It is fun.
Like, my kids watch it a lot, and they're just like, thank God they have some kids. And it's just so great because he's almost like this hero for everybody, and it's really nice in a way because he's for everybody.
Yes, he is for everybody.
That's lovely.
That's lovely.
And but Shehri, I see that a lot of tricky topics, like for example, I saw one on nikah namas. On what goes into a marriage contract. And there's a lot of sort of serious stuff.
Yeah, so there's a
there as
combination,
well.
right? So we've got a section Shehri Bacche.
Right,
So where
which is
we
for kids, Shehri for kids.
Shehri for kids. So we would have stories for cats and aliens and whatnot. So Khalai Makhlook ki kahaniyan, with stories on Khalai Makhlook, you know.
Like aliens,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
ghosties.
Yeah, ghosties, things that would capture your imagination, but subliminally have civic messages.
I have one with
Yes,
me,
Billu.
and it's called Billu, which is like little cat. For those of you who don't know what a tiny cat in Urdu is, which is fine, it's okay. And this is so nice. It's like this little pink, hairless
Sphinx cat, yeah.
Sphinx cat, and he's holding a little ball of yarn. And he's looking very sad. What is this about?
So
Poor.
this we have an animated
We're
version
matching.
of this. Yeah, you're matching.
Yeah,
we have an
in
animated
sync.
version of this on Shehri, where we have voice acted
nice.
all of this.
Okay.
And this is about a cat who isn't allowed to meow.
Oh, so he doesn't have a voice.
He's not allowed to have a voice.
He has a voice, but he's not allowed to use it.
Yes. A, he's not allowed to say meow, and
Right.
B, he's not allowed to call himself a cat.
Oh, because he doesn't look like the other cats.
Yeah, so there's a marginalization of that cat and bullying in the school, where other cats who look more like cats
Yeah,
are like.
because you have these cats,
Yes.
which are like fluffy cats,
Yeah.
and they look like cats technically should.
Yeah.
And then poor thing is crying.
But our protagonist, Billu, then
Yes.
saves the day
Yeah.
and shows that if you come together, just allow other people to have that identity, don't marginalize them. So we have these kind of strictly difficult topics, but talking about it in fun ways for kids. Then we have...
But this is also the sort of thing that a caregiver or somebody is interacting with a child. If you're reading it out to your child, or if you're watching this cartoon with them, then it's a really great starting point for you to have a conversation with your kid about things which it sounds like it's not much, that if somebody's different, then you shouldn't bully somebody just because they look different. You know, but at the same time, it's also a massive thing. There's so much bullying in schools. At the same time, and it's a two-pronged thing.
It's bullying in schools, and we grow up, and then there's institutionalized bullying.
Yes.
But this is so much fun, the stuff that they're creating. You're giving such important messages in such a nuanced manner. And also, what they're doing is they're also not making these messages seem foreign. These values of, they've sort of taken on negative connotations. When we say...
It's a Western philosophy.
Tolerance is a Western term. Women empowerment, equality, gender equality, these are all considered to be Western notions. Yet they are deeply rooted within our society.
Every society, because it's for humans.
Particularly our society. We in some ways were much more progressive at a certain point in our history compared to other civilizations that are now considered... Now it's considered to be, West is supposed to be at the forefront of, civics and, tolerance and all that. But these are our own indigenous values. And when communicating that to people, we have to emphasize that. Because the moment you give this foreign lens to it, your shields come up. You're not receptive to the message. And you have to be cognizant of people's, biases or what they've been conditioned to. Like, it's not the end product. You've been conditioned to such an extent that you don't even know what lenses you have. So we have to be sensitive about that. We have to be knowledgeable that these are not foreign values. Women empowerment, if we look at it from a religious lens, we've got so many examples of that.
It's really not as foreign as it sounds.
It isn't. Tolerance, we have so many examples of that within Pakistani history, within
subcontinental history, just where we are as people, geographically located and historically located.
So sometimes people, the reason why I respect Shehri's work is that they don't orientalize what's ours. We have, when we do something that's with a message, we somehow...
We're not trying to copy the West in any way. We're just trying to tell our own stories the way they need to be told.
Absolutely. And we need more of this. We need more conversations. Content will lead to further dialogue and new ways for people thinking. When there are two competing ideas that come into a person's mind, it causes cognitive dissonance. You have to reconcile those ideas. And eventually, that leads to a new way of thinking. And you slowly move that towards, and that's for an individual to...
So one shouldn't fear the dissonance. it's okay. It's a starting point to something better, to a sort of more forward way or a better way of thinking. So we're just going to take a quick break, do some thinking. See you in a second. Hi, welcome back to the coffee table. As you know, as you have been watching the show throughout, we have been talking about civics and why it is important. And now we're going to talk to these two gentlemen about their future plans for all their amazing civic education projects. So Daniyal, tell me, Quaid Se Baatein is 2 seasons in of like fabulous content. So what's next?
So there are a couple of things that we're working on. One is that we want to take it bigger and better. We're working on a feature film on Quaid Se Baatein.
Oh, wow.
We want sort of Zainab to become the Dora of Pakistan. That, you know,
Will she have a backpack?
She has a backpack that are in stores.
Ooh.
You can order them. Plug.
Get your backpack today.
So why not? Why don't we have our own indigenous characters on instead of
And she's
kids
going to be civics Dora of Pakistan, going around spreading good values to the land.
Well, so we've kind of we've done that portion. Now we're actually trying to increase our emphasis on, you know, entertainment. So it's going to be more the Pixar vein. It's going to be giving a message, but it's going to be a lot,
Like
you know,
super fun.
Yeah. So it's going to be, that's what we're working on. It'll give you an interesting, we've got a few cool tricks up our sleeves.
Can't wait to see that. That sounds like so much fun.
Yes, it
And I
does.
know that Shehri is also working on something similar.
So with the Shehri side, we're working with madrasas and seminaries on developing a constitutional module in madrasas because
Okay, but what does that mean, a constitutional module?
So, for example, at seminaries, there's a Dars-e-Nizami, that's the curriculum. And they also study a social contract.
Okay,
but
so there's a curriculum, an academic curriculum, and then there's a social
within that curriculum, there's a text in which they study the social contract, which was a 15th, 16th century empire time contract.
So, again, the idea of the social contract goes back to very ancient times.
Yeah, but it just looks different because it's a conquest treaty.
Right.
So
and of course, society has changed and we don't do the conquests
anymore.
So much anymore.
So what we're trying to do, as he talked about, in an indigenous way, because we're a post-colonial society, we want to make our own ideas. So we're working with the jurists over there to develop an egalitarian idea of citizenship and a module that is in line with our fundamental rights in the state, but also in line with the traditional Islamic legal jurisprudence.
Excellent. So that's a really great balance.
Yeah. So that's for seminaries. Then we're going to launch our app with games and videos and all that. Yeah.
I'm not dying to play the game now.
Yes.
I want to make good civic choices.
Yes, moral choices. But on the other hand, we're also doing something very different. So we're releasing a couple of short films. Both of them are this Black Mirror sort of dystopian sci-fi animated films, traditionally short films. And Shehri Tabassum is our first release, which is basically set in 2071.
And Shehri Tabassum literally translates as City of Smiles.
City of Smiles. It's a cautionary tale. It's the opposite of Shehri Pakistan because that's what happens when you do not engage in your civic duties and engagements. You do not fight for your rights. You end up with an authoritarian state that took away all your rights. So the premise of the story is that in 2071, the state has banned all forms of expression except smiling. So you have to be smiling all the time.
Wow.
And that's the premise of our protagonist landing in a society. And it's set in Lahore. It's set in 2071. There's a lot of exciting visuals. It looks like our idea of Blade Runner and Akira. And in Pakistan, you have a very sci-fi looking film. But at the same
So it basically looks like the essays that, teachers make you write, 50 years in the future, the world looks like this.
Yes. And hopefully, while it's a film, it's an entertaining film, and it's a thriller film. At the same time, the short film, I would like to think that these cautionary tales are crucial because on one hand, we're develop a healthy relationship with the state, understand the state. But on the other hand, we also show how state can be an antagonist if you do not hold it accountable.
Right, because you are, by not being aware of your civic duty and your civic responsibilities, you're basically giving the state a great deal of leeway to do whatever it likes unchecked. So as a citizen, it's almost your moral duty to not relinquish that control because you have that power.
Especially in the name of social order. And that's what happens usually. Citizens, we're sometimes not thinking critically or sometimes don't have the channels to challenge this idea. Let's take away more of your rights in the name of social order.
To keep you safe.
To keep you safe, yes.
To keep things calm and to prevent chaos.
And that's how an authoritarian regime starts.
Yes.
And which is why we have this balance of very earnest messaging on Shehri Pakistan, but we also are aware that it's a difficult world out there and you need to understand it. And if you don't, there are consequences that you have to deal with. And
they're very real. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not completely, this sort of idea is not based into something that's completely imaginary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's happened.
Yep.
In countries around the world. It's happened before. It's not just an airy-fairy kind of
Forms of
story.
Lighter forms happen all over the country, world, including Pakistan, including America. Some kind of persecution, some kind of institutional persecution continue to happen.
So these are really different levels, but of civic education, but all super crucial in their own ways. What's the response generally been like for this kind of content?
So with Quaid Se Baatein, the most motivating thing that I found was it's a unifying piece of content that people just like, regardless of what their value, where they fall on the spectrum of conservatism versus. So that's been really inspiring. So as I mentioned, we get a lot of hits on YouTube. We've done a few pilots of Quaid Se Baatein within schools as a curriculum module. We've done it in KPK, we've done it in the federal government, and now in Sindh.
That's really interesting because to have it in schools, because schools is where I imagine that the civic education should begin, in schools as a part of all your other curriculum. This is a crucial part of your development as a human and as a citizen. And does Shehri have some sort of similar curriculum plans?
Yeah, so some of them is already happening. So we've got 1 million people on our Facebook. So what happens is, and we've done hundreds of videos, people are always messaging us to come to their schools.
Really?
Volunteer basis. They want to pay for the travel costs. And so we're able to penetrate a lot of different areas, but not scaled. So it's very few. We can't do that at a level that's scaled, but it's really good to see the response that they want us to bring a projector and then enact it. So for example, if we have a video on how you pass a law, I did not know the exact ways how it happens myself before we did it. And the way we do it when we go to school, we enact it. So if you want to pass a law in the classroom, after they see the video, they pass a law that we need more trees.
Right.
So they use that to enact it, or they read Billu. After that, they enact it by pulling on mask. Now, those kind of things we can only do so much, and it speaks a volume to our community that they're trying to do it themselves. But I think there's a responsibility also on the government side to take interest in what these guys are doing, what we're trying to do. A lot of people in the civil society are trying to do, and
it's really heartening that there is such a decidedly positive response to this. People are curious; they want to know.
Yes.
So it's not like like you said, that it's not always the sense that this is a foreign concept and it doesn't belong here. But people, once they sort of are cognizant of its existence, they're like, tell me more. I want to be better. I want to improve as a citizen. And that's so.
I mean, they're critical. They're critical sometimes.
They're also great.
Which is great.
Yeah,
it helps us improve.
It's the right spirit.
Yes, helps. So, for example, if we're writing our textbook, it helps us improve when they give us feedback. So our end textbook reflects the values of everybody, not just a preaching of a small subculture.
Which is exactly what civics education is about.
Yes.
Everyone's voices coming together like Captain Planet.
Not a bad analogy, absolutely.
Yes, but our powers combined.
Yes.
It makes complete sense. But why have you guys considered combining your powers also?
Yes, we were just talking about it. You
heard it first here on the coffee table.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. No, honestly, I think because these guys have such great capacity and such great penetration reach, and they've done a lot more work in schools as well. And so we complement each other really well. Technically, research-wise as well, we're yin and yang in a way. If they do 3D, we do 2D. So it's a natural collaboration.
We're all fluffy, feel-goody. They're all very technical, hard facts, giving how to pass a law and all that. They're giving functional information. So it's as you said, a great compliment, and hopefully we're going to go and try to scale up our efforts together.
That sounds so great. I can't wait for this. And I'm really excited about the prospect of having curriculum introduced in schools. Because, that's where it begins. I remember my mom telling me about how, and this is
70s.
A fair amount of time ago, and I don't want to be too specific because you have to go back home. But no, she talked about how they used to have a civics class in school, which is so important. And I'm sort of gobsmacked as to why we never had a civics class in school. And that I think that whole idea that you probably just learn these things at home and it's not that important, and maybe you should just do, more math instead.
Math's not going to teach you what a constitution is.
Yes.
And everybody should know what a constitution is.
Yeah, and how important your vote is.
Yes.
And also, don't throw garbage out of your car. Like, people do this all the time, and it's so wrong. And I've actually, in a do-goodish way, sort of picked stuff up and knocked on the window and be like, you dropped something.
That's really. Has anyone ever been really angry because you did that?
Well, yeah, there were nobody was pleased.
Yeah.
Some people didn't put their window down, but I feel proud of myself for at least trying.
Yeah.
Because, I go, okay, fine, I might have been shaming them a little bit, but it's just wrong. And when people talk about educated people who do bad things, and when we travel and we go abroad, and they have a system there, everybody stands in their line. I was in Berlin, and you're supposed to obviously get a train ticket to use the train, but they don't check it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, they don't check the ticket? What? Because the social contract is so strong that in Germany, nobody can conceive that you would jump on a train without buying a ticket.
So this is my favorite example to highlight what the Pakistani mindset. Unfortunately, we're conditioned to think this way. So when you take a PI flight from London, same Pakistani citizens, all law-abiding, perfectly, respectful, sitting in their chair, put on their seatbelt. Flight's going well. As soon as you hit Pakistani airspace, they hear the descent. They're like, "Let me unbuckle, start taking out let me stop making any cues," and that's just indicative of how we're conditioned. That in Pakistan, there's this perception that if you do not do this kind of action, you will be left behind.
Yes, it's sort of, you're in the jungle now.
You're in the jungle, if you go by the book, you're going to be left behind. So that is very indicative that they're abiding by the social contract over there. We have conditioned our society to have a different social contract.
And we hold ourselves to a different standard as well. Because if you can follow the social contract of a different country and respect that, why can't we do it for ourselves? And that is where the civic education is a crucial thing. And it's something that we all need to be super aware of, because this is our country and we can make it better on our own. We have everything that we need. And if you don't have things that you need, you know where to find it. Thank you so much for being on the show, you guys.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Wonderful conversation. Very, very important. If you're watching this on YouTube, share this show. And we will see you next time on The Coffee Table. Bye now.